Poetry can embrace anything, from culture, myths, or place, to one's own life and history, but it takes a committed poet to embrace them all. This is the story of a CUNY graduate who became a Pulitzer Prize winner and whose poetry stretches from ancient Greece to heartfelt and complex remembrances of his father.
I was born in minutes in a roadside kitchen, a skillet whispering my name. I was born to rainwater and lie. I was born across the river where I was borrowed with clothespins, a harrow tooth, broadsides sewn in my shoes. I returned, no fault of my own. I think of it as I am calling upon as much of myself and my awareness as possible. To do anything different would be to attempt to fit myself into accepted narratives, identity narratives. There's another long tradition in African American literature of subverting stereotypes. And I think there's some of that impulse in my work. But there's also just this refusal to be the representative of anything, really. And so when I'm bringing in references and changing diction, my argument is this is what we do all the time, and that what is unnatural is the way people behave in order to make themselves legible in a particular in a particular sense of identity. I read minds before I could read fishes and loaves. I walked a piece of the way alone before I was born.
Gregory Pardlo was raised in a suburban town outside of Philadelphia called Willingboro.
Willingboro was a Levitt town, which means that there were a handful of models of homes. My neighborhood in the town was very familiar and very domestic. I often think of Willingboro as a kind of Harlem of South Jersey, right? It was a very multicultural and diverse town when I was growing up.
Pardlo played tennis and was on the swim and diving teams, as well as the Cub Scouts.
All of that stuff kind of forms my sense of belonging, which I think is really important. I'm not writing as an outsider. I'm writing as someone who very much owns this culture and is invested in the success of this experiment, this democratic experiment.
But the age of 13 was marked by a seismic event. His father, Greg Sr., participated in the air traffic controllers strike of 1981 as a union member. The strike was brutally ended when President Ronald Reagan fired over 11,000 controllers who had refused to go back to work. The incident was life-altering for the young Greg. He later wrote his memoir, Air Traffic, a memoir of ambition and manhood in America about this time.
It was such a stark change in our family life and our conditions. Such a stark change in my father's life and his self-image, right? And so me being at puberty at the time, I think that had a big impact on my self-image as a man. What were the acceptable narratives that one could grow into? My father losing his job and being kind of adrift for a while gave me permission to be an artist.
The family struggled, but Greg still planned on going to college.
I remember when I was very young, they proudly showed me the treasury bills that they were saving for my college tuition. That just reinforced the narrative, the inevitability that I was going to college, right? In my mind, it was a done deal. But of course, after the firing, after the strike, all of that went up in smoke.
Instead, Greg joined the Marines.
I decided if I was going to reinvent myself or invent myself, period, that this was a good opportunity. Of course, I wasn't thinking that consciously at the time, right? But I think deep down there was a sense of this is an opportunity for a clean slate. Whatever I come out as on the other end will be largely self-made. My pop let me steer when I was small enough to snug between his belly and the wheel. Any random intersection, he might hoist me across the handbrake onto his lap to pilot the wagon before returning me to earth. One of the things I'm interested in is the constructions of identity in general, particularly constructions of masculinity. When we say the patriarchy, what are we actually talking about? For me, my father is always going to be present in that conversation. He's present as a life that I didn't lead, right? He's a case study that I know intimately, and therefore I call on that awareness quite a bit. Swinging our private chariot of steel and bone.
Sometime after the Marines, Greg worked at a jazz club owned by his grandfather called Serengeti's Cafe and Jazz Club in Pennsauken.
And they were just consummate musicians, and they were passionate about their craft, and they were talking about the art. And it was just such a revelation for me to be around people who cared about their work in that way.
Watching jazz musicians gave him the notion that a creative life was possible. At the same time, an academic life began to take shape. He studied at Rutgers in Camden and enrolled in the MFA program at NYU for poetry. After this, he began to teach at CUNY, at Hunter College, John Jay, and Medgar Evers College.
It was liberating to realize, to understand that I could have that kind of a relationship to the academy, because I had always thought of schoolwork as arduous and something drudgery. And now suddenly I'm skipping to school and I can't wait to get into class.
Pardlo also studied at Columbia University and was enrolled there when he won the Pulitzer Prize for his first book, Digest. He eventually earned his PhD from the CUNY Graduate Center.
Digest is me thinking through what it means to be a father, what it means to be a husband, thinking about my this kind of holistic approach where everything is material for my work.
Eventually, Pardlo found his way to NYU's Abu Dhabi campus, where he has been a full professor for 3 years. And in 2024, his latest book of poetry, Spectral Evidence, was published.
It comes at a more specific social cultural issue. There is this existential problem of what it means for me to exist in this society. And that is that I am constantly at risk of being killed by a police officer. I know I say that, and the world hears something overblown and exaggerated and unwarranted, but the truth is, it is a reality in my mind. I know that at any moment, an interaction can go wildly wrong, right? And I've seen it happen. I've experienced it enough times that I know it's a reality. So, given that I love this country and this culture and my friends and neighbors and family as much as I do, this is something I have to reconcile with. How do I navigate a world that discounts the reality that I live with? I'm using my life as a sort of canvas for the kinds of social and cultural criticism that I want to make. What's on the page is also, here is this guy, Greg Pardlo, who occupies a particular social location, and let's see what impact the world has on his life, right? And so that's kind of the approach that I have. Let this power invested of gavel and oath help her give birth through her mouth like a god.